Okay, so in this presentation, I'm going to talk to you about some 10 strategies that will help you increase your score in your GMAT preparation. Now, before we begin, maybe not everybody knows who I am. My name is Christian. Thanks for being here. Well, I've been a GMAT tutor for well over 7 years. I've trained many dozens of students to get a score only for Quant. That's what I specialize in for GMAT Quant. And well, through my experience, I've learned some things that I want to share with you today. And well, that is the reason of this session. Okay. Okay. So I don't know if maybe you guys are just starting out. Maybe some of you are already like taking classes, or maybe you've taken a GMAT already before, and you want to increase your score. So maybe some of those reasons that you're not increasing your score yet, maybe in one of these 10 points that I'm going to show you today. So let's start. In the first point is the commitment to study. Now this is very important because sometimes when students start to prepare for the GMAT, they think, oh, it's going to take about a week, maybe a month. You know, everybody has a friend who got a 700 or plus just reading some books and doing some exercises. Those cases exist, but those are not the majority. And the truth is that studying for the GMAT takes about 4 months, 6 months. I have students that have been preparing for over a year. And that's not to shame on them, but it's just that that's the reality that everybody takes their own time. Work gets in the way, travel, family, not right now COVID, things like that. Everything can happen to your preparation, so it's not something that you should um, go into expecting it to be easy. Right? You need to commit to study. That is the first thing by far. And also, when you are preparing for the GMAT, you need to do a lot of exercises. You know, sometimes when I have students that that are preparing and they want to, they don't know why they are stuck at some level. And then I ask them, hey, how many exercises are you doing per week or per day? And they say, well, I've just done this 30 question pack from last week to this week. So if you break it down, 30 questions per week, that's not that many actually. And I've had the privilege of training people that have gone to very high scores. And usually for those cases, they do way more number of exercises per day. So sometimes sometimes they take a break from work. That also helps. But the commitment to study is there, and it's very high. So I sometimes I assign them to do one of those 30 question packs from one day to the next, and they do it, all week, and they do like 100 questions per day. When sorry, questions every couple of days. They do a lot of questions. They finish all the questions. Okay, so that is just no wonder that they get such a high score. And also, I've seen it in some students that have finished the theory, have finished the course, and then they want to increase their score. And sometimes we do exercises and things like that. But I've had a couple of them that kind of disappeared, kind of stopped taking classes. And then a few months later, they tell me that they got their score. And I asked them, how you do it? And they said, well, I just took all the GMAT books, all the GMAT questions that I could find on the internet, and I just did them all many times. And I think that's one of the tricks or the secrets in order to get a good score. Okay, so that's the first thing that I need to share with you today. This is the commitment to study. It's very important. Then the student profile for a 700 plus. So what kind of students get a 700 plus, and can everybody get a 700 plus? That is the question. The question. I think that some students will struggle a lot to get a 700 plus. Well, you have two sections in the GMAT, right? You have Quant and you have Verbal, and actually Verbal takes a little bit more. It's more important. It has the highest percentile in the scores. So for example, if you get a 40 in quant, that's really bad. If you get a 40 in verbal, that's really high. Not everybody gets a 40 in verbal. So just to keep that in mind. On the profile for 700 plus, in the case of quant, it's usually when they already have some ability in quant, but they don't have the right tools. So I've had some students that took previous courses, for example, like Magoosh, Manhattan, or GMAT, and they tell me, hey Christian, I want to increase my score. I've already done a course, but I'm stuck like at 45, things like that. And so I send them a diagnostic test, and in this test, I see that they do have the ability, right? They work out the questions, they do the right steps, but they don't have the right tools or the right strategies or the right formulas. And that's when I see a lot of potential in there, because if you already have the like the quant ability, you like math and you're kind of good at math naturally, and then you pair that with the right tools, then you're naturally going to increase your score. And those are the cases that I've seen that they increase their score fastest. They're not the only cases, but they're the fastest. In the other cases, when they don't have that quant ability, they really do need to do a lot of exercises, like a lot of exercises, and repeat and then repeat and repeat, and also do questions that you did before again, right? The questions are not just to do them once. The questions are to do them many times over. And that's actually the secret for teaching quant, because, for example, when I teach quant and the questions that I see with students, those are questions that I've seen many times. Even the questions from the mock exams, those are questions that I've seen thousands of times with many different students over the years. And so I don't know them by heart. I just read the first few words, and then I already know what the question is about, what the possible mistakes are, and the right answer, right? Things like that. And you can get that to that level too if you do questions many, many times. So when you are studying, just you kind of you can make a log of the question that you got wrong, and over time you can go back to them and try them again with timing, obviously, and try to do them faster, try to do them with more properties and things like that. That's going to help you out a lot. Okay. So that's the profile for 700 plus. Those are the like the characteristics that I look for, that I notice in students that get high score. Also, I want to talk about when to take mock exams. Sometimes when students begin a course, for example, here in Lima, there are academies and they do like group classes, and they tell you you have to take an initial GMAT score to know your like your baseline. And I'm not um, I don't like that. I don't like that. I tell students you don't need to do an entrance exam, especially for quant, because in quant there is this type of question that is data sufficiency. And if you haven't studied data sufficiency before, there is a specific logic for data sufficiency that you need to be familiar with in order to answer well. Because if you just think, well, this statement helps me, this statement doesn't help me, and that's it, well, you're obviously going to have questions wrong. And sometimes, well, I think that the academies do this in order to tell you, hey, you did really bad, so you need classes, something like that. But after you take your course, then I think it's time to take mock exams. Now you shouldn't take mock exams every day, even if you're close to your exam, because it's like looking at yourself in the mirror every day and expecting to grow a few centimeters. That's not possible. So when you take exams, when you are already you finish your course, not midway through the course, you finish the course, and you're also improving between exams. So for example, you take an exam and you analyze it, you say, okay, what went wrong? What are the topics? What are the strategies that I did wrong that I need to apply? What do I need to change about my time management? And then you apply that to the next mock, but it's not the next day. You have to take a few days. Uh, I say maybe a week is okay, depending on when is your deadline, of course, right? And if you're very close to your deadline, then or to the exam date, then don't take a mock exam. The day before, it's not worth it because nothing's going to change. from one day to the next. If you get a bad score, then you're going to go depressed. And if you get a good score, then I don't know if that's going to reflect on your exam, right? So I think a few days before you should stop and then just review. Okay, that's the third point. When to take mock exams. Next, students that try too many numbers. Well, I've seen students that try too many numbers. When I told you that I have students that took courses before, or maybe they have prepared by themselves, and then they say, okay, what do I need to do to increase my score? Then I send them this diagnostic test. And when I see the steps, then sometimes I see students that try too many numbers. And usually what that tells me is that they don't have a solid foundation of the theory, right? Because when you try too many numbers, when you try like cases, you try logic and things like that, that is going to get you like midway through the scale. It's going to top out at around 45. And usually that's the score that this kind of student get. But in order to get a 48 or 49, it's not that you have to try values faster or more, it's that you have to change it. You have to change the base, you have to like change the theory structure that you're applying or that you have learned. Okay. So if you try too many numbers or try too many values as your like first tactic or your first resource, then you have to change that. That's not going to get you very far. Okay. So for the combination for 49 in quant, I mean, going back to the previous point, is to first have the solid base, the solid theory, and then on top of that, you can add like shortcuts, like trying values, like for example, in problem solving, you can use last digit, things like that. But that's only on top. So it's not the replacement, it's not everything, it's on top. So first you have to have a very solid understanding about the theory, about the properties and the types of questions that you see in the exam, like the patterns. Okay, and then you can get a 49 in quant. Next, also you have to practice doing less steps. That's writing takes time because when I see students that they know, I mean, they studied, they know how to get to the answer, but they write many steps, it usually tells me that they're going to take a lot of time. Naturally, when you try to fill out a page with a lot of steps, it takes time, right? So when I tell them, okay, you have to do some mental steps and then some breathing steps, mental steps, breathing steps, and they tell me, no, Chris, I'm afraid because I don't know if I'm going to get some steps wrong. I don't want to do them in my mind. Well, the natural answer is you have to practice. Obviously, if you try it for the first time, then you're not going to be very good at it, right? For example, in my case, when I see questions, I can sometimes do them all in my mind because I've practiced it many years. But somebody that's just starting out, when they write only the necessary steps and then some small steps, they can do them in their mind, then it's going to be faster because thinking out a step is faster than writing it down. Okay, that is the sixth tip. Okay, now let's talk about time management. Time management, for example, for a score of 45. Now, why do I say score 45? Well, the reason is because time management evolves as your score increases. It's not just one time management strategy for every score, for every level. No. What I've seen that works in my experience, uh, when you are at 45, the number of questions that you can get wrong is around 15. 15 out of 31 questions, which is about half the exam. So you can get half the exam wrong and still get a 45, which is around 50th percentile. So it's around the half. The problem with that is that if you get 15 questions wrong, you can also get a very bad score, like 30. So it's a very big range. You get a lot of questions wrong, and it's going to depend on where the question is. I mean, in the beginning, at the end, if it's hard, if it's easy, if they're very together or very separated, and things like that. So in order to get the better score, like 45, with that kind of number of incorrect questions, then you have to distribute your questions wrong better. And that means trying to get them later on in the exam, not at the beginning, like later on in the exam. And so you have to take a little bit more time at the beginning. That's maybe some of you have heard about taking more time in the first 10 questions, but this is mostly for like this level when you are around 45 in quant. Because if you're going to get around 15 questions wrong because you still haven't finished studying or haven't finished learning or practicing the properties, and you are going to get around half the questions wrong, then it's best to get them wrong later on in the exam. Okay, so later on the exam is going to give you better score than if you get them at the beginning. Now, naturally, your score is going to, sorry, the time is going to be tight. If you take too much time at the beginning, then you're not going to be able to finish maybe all the questions, and you have to skip some questions at the end, and that's natural. So, as I told you in the mock exams, you have to try different strategies. So maybe in your first mock exam, you try one strategy, taking a lot more time at the beginning, and then as you evolve in your time management, in your speed, in your knowledge of the GMAT, then you're naturally going to take less time. You're naturally going to be able to do more questions in the 62 minutes that you have. Okay, so in order to get a 49 plus, what is the time management strategy? Well, as you move closer to 49, 50, 51, then the focus is not on getting more questions right at the beginning. The focus is on getting more questions right, period, to get everything okay, because you are at that level. And the focus for somebody that's at 51 or level 51 or 50 is you have to do everything well. Now, that means that if you're at the beginning of the exam and and a hard question comes up, you can take 5 minutes, 6 minutes, and nothing happens because of your level, you're naturally going to compensate with other questions. Maybe do questions in 1 minute, or 30 seconds, or 45 seconds, 1 minute and a half, and that compensates. And that happened to me. I mean, when I took the exam the first time, I got 51, and there are some questions that I took 5 minutes. And it's not that because I'm a teacher, I get every questions in 30 seconds or something like that. I took some questions 5 minutes, and I had 5 minutes left at the exam, right? So if you compensate with the easier questions or with the intermediate questions, then you can take more time in those hard questions that are going to give you that higher score. Because if you get those hard questions wrong, they don't like um, they don't decrease your score that much. A hard question in the GMAT is when everybody gets it wrong. So it might be a question that is very difficult, like to understand or to operate, or it might be a question that it just has a trap, like a small little trap, and everybody falls for it. It might be that. And in those cases, if you get it wrong, then it's not going to penalize you that much, right? But in the other in the other case, when you have an easy question that everybody gets right, and you get it wrong because I don't know, maybe you read the question wrong or things like that, or you were careless, then that's going to affect you a lot. So when you have an easy question and you get it wrong, you get a lower score. Okay. So what I was saying is that when you have those questions that are hard and you take the time to get them correct, then your score increases because the algorithm is going to say, okay, I'm putting this person up to this level, and then he or she can solve it, and so he or she must be at this level. But if you get it wrong, it just stays the same or it doesn't come down too much. Okay. So for 49 quant, the focus is going to be more on getting everything correct, more than on how you distribute your time. Okay. That is because you are at that level. Now, time management is not a way to compensate for lack of study. So if you don't study that much and you're not at level 49, then don't expect to get a 49 with some magic formula like a time strategy, right? When I told you about the score 45, That is if you are at that level and you want to optimize for that level. Okay. All right. So that's tip number 8. Tip number 9. Let's talk about GMAT books and forms. Okay. So the resources that you can find online. These are the GMAT books and forms. For GMAT books, what I see, what I consider them is as like a question bank, more than as a source for learning everything about the GMAT. And those of you that have seen the GMAT books and the explanations will agree with me that the explanations are not made for you to get a 50 in quant. The explanations are just made for somebody that wants to see how it's done. Maybe it's not the most efficient way, and sometimes it's very confusing, but it's there. It's a solution, right? That's a way to get to the answer key, but it's not the most efficient way. So when you have learned your theory, you have learned like a course, and you already practiced it, then you can go to the GMAT books as a question bank and start doing those questions, because those questions are very good actually. The style of those questions are very close to the official ones. Well, if you do the official GMAT books, I mean, the um, the GMAT official guide, the GMAT quant review, the GMAT verbal review, those questions are very good. Okay, just not the explanations. Don't trust the explanations too much. And now let's talk about forums, because forums is a very popular resource that many people use every day, and it's actually like a great like a repository of questions that you can search, that you can filter, and that helps you out a lot in your study. But uh, what I think is that you shouldn't do it at first. So don't rush into forums looking for like the answers, right? And I get that many times. And I have students that are practicing for the GMAT, and they tell me, "Hey, Christian, why do I need to take classes if I can find everything online in the forums like GMAT Club or Beta GMAT?" And what other students tell me that when they have practice with forums is that, hey, anybody can post an opinion there, right? So sure, there are people that have a lot of experience and they post some very good explanations, but sometimes it's not like a coherent. Um, there's not a way to incorporate it into your theory. That's what I mean. So when you see an explanation that you like, and it's very seems very simple, then sometimes you are left wondering, how do I apply this to another question, or how do I recognize that I have to use like this type of strategy or tactic? Okay, so forums is mostly for when you already prepared, you already know the theory and the formula, and then you want to practice more, or you want to find like additional opinions about how to solve questions. That way you can see if they're good or bad. But when you're preparing, everything seems good. When you're already prepared, you can differentiate when it's good and when it's bad. Okay. And the last one, um, data sufficiency versus problem solving. Well, this I say the last one because it's a little bit more extensive. So in data sufficiency, the problem with data sufficiency, when everybody learns data sufficiency, is that they hear you don't need to get to the answer, you don't need to solve it, you just need to know which one is sufficient or not. And when students hear that, they interpret it as, I don't need to write down, I don't need to like set up the equation, and I can do it in my mind. Those are the things that they understand. So that's why when I see the diagnostic results for many students, for example, in statement 1 they just write not sufficient, or in statement 2 they write sufficient, but there's nothing like there's no procedure, there's no step by step, and that's when you can fall into traps, right? What I suggest, I mean, like um, the only kind of person that can get away with that is somebody that's already at 15 quants, I think. Somebody that's at 40 in quant, 45 in quant, and is doing like that kind of procedure, just writing sufficient or not sufficient, like eyeballing it, and it's not for them. It's not for them yet. Okay. So for data sufficiency, what I found to be really, really helpful is try to solve it as a problem solving question, but just don't finish solving it. But set it up, do the equation, put the variables as if you were to finish solving it the way you're writing it down, then you get to the exact answer. And I mean, not just like writing down the variables and saying, okay, uh, there's some way that this is going to work, and so it's sufficient. No, I mean, writing down the equation and then just leaving it there, right? Until you can see like a step where if you finish solving it, then you would get the answer. Okay, so that's for data sufficiency. Then for problem solving, it's actually like the opposite, because in problem solving, that's when I see that most people write down, and they write down a lot. As I told you before, writing down is not that good. It takes time. So for problem solving, the the so the suggestion would be try to use more values. I mean, after you have your base theory of the properties, then you can add on top of that, trying values, trying the alternatives, trying last digit. Using, I mean, if you're solving problem solving, look at the answer choices before, because you want to see what kind of numbers that they give you. Are they separated? Do they tell you that it's approximately or closest not or closest to? Are they together? Are they decimals? Things like that. Because, for example, if they're very, very, very far apart, then you can approximate. You can approximate since the first steps. But if they are very close together, then it's not a very good idea to approximate, but rather at the end, for example. Okay. So for problem solving, I suggest that you do like more trying numbers after you have your theory in base, and then you can add on top all the other like the shortcuts. Okay.